Well, this is it. We've been telling you the Saints have been playing games with their backs against the wall, do or die, must win. We've said that like 5 times this season, which is probably irresponsible. But
It's definitely irresponsible.
Here we are. This week, Saints at Buccaneers. This one's a must-win, guys. And we're here to talk about it on the Saints Insider podcast for Friday, December the 29th. I'm Zach Ewing. That's Matthew Paris, Luke Johnson, Jeff Duncan. We can actually responsibly use the term today.
Yes. Good for us.
So let's do it.
Good for us that we got here. Yeah, they have to win this game. If they legitimately want to make the playoffs, which clearly the team wants to make the playoffs, right? They got a lot of people with a lot riding on this. But if they are going to have any shot whatsoever, they have to win, because if they lose, they're out. And even then, their shot is not looking too great right now.
We're going to get a full breakdown of the game for you on today's episode. But before we do, I want to let you know that Saints Insider is sponsored by Bank Plus. Their banking decisions are actually made here in New Orleans by local bankers who know the community and take the time to know you. From small business to big business, home loans to Bank Anywhere technology, Bank Plus is here for New Orleans. Learn more at bankplus.net. Also want to let you know you can read all of our stuff at NOLA.com/Saints. Matt has a great story this morning, kind of the overarching picture of how the Saints got here. We also want you to subscribe to the Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel and hit the like button. Every week we get this many thousand viewers, and only this percentage are subscribed, and only this percentage hit the like button. So come on, it doesn't take long. We appreciate you hitting that button. So Matt, tell us about that story before we dig into the game. Talked to a lot of players and coaches this week and kind of just summed up the situation.
Yeah, I kind of just asked a simple question of how did we get here? And a lot of guys feel like they missed their potential, that they haven't capitalized on their potential of this team. Now, we can have a debate of whether they misjudged their potential in the season, and maybe that's why they're at this point. But I think for me, it comes down to a simple thing of their record against winning teams has just been completely terrible. They're 1-5. Their lone win was against the Indianapolis Colts. But of the 5 games that they've lost, they've only really had a lead in one of them, and that was the Tampa game, which was the biggest rout of them all. So you look at that. Tyrann Mathieu said that all year it feels like they've been in catch-up mode, and they had that, and that was with a 2-0 start. So it applies to the games, it applies to the standings, and they have they just need some help this week as well, beyond the fact that they have to win. So they really have no one but themselves to blame.
Yeah, Jeff, you were talking about some of your thoughts on the team before we got on the air. Just it kind of feels like a beaten down team right now.
Yeah, I think everybody was all in early, and it feels like as the season's gone on, these tough losses have mounted. Some of the steam's come out, right? The wind in their sails, and I talked about this on the podcast earlier this week. I felt like that Rams game, I didn't see the effort and energy. They were out there, but there wasn't a lot of passion. And to me, that's unacceptable considering all the stakes that were on there. So I'll be interested to see what kind of effort they give this weekend with everything on the line, or if they already checked out. Because it certainly looked to me like the Rams definitely wanted that game more than they did, and just the body language, the enthusiasm on the sidelines. I mean, I'm a big believer in watching those kind of things during a game, and I didn't see it from the Saints sideline, or a guy makes a tackle, there was no rallying to the guy and celebrating touchdowns, maybe a little bit, but overall, I just didn't see it.
Yeah. So that brings us to Sunday. Saints are at the Bucs, 1 p.m. Eastern, noon here in New Orleans. Game is on Fox, and Luke, you talk about the Saints. Now they did win the 2 games before the Rams game, but they've just kind of been stuck in neutral all season long. The Bucs are the opposite. 4 straight wins right when they needed it. Clutch performances. Seem to be playing better. Saints may be running into a buzzsaw.
Well, I wouldn't call
relatively
it I wouldn't call it a buzzsaw. The Bucs are still. They're still. I think a mediocre NFL team. I think they are clearly having a much better season than the Saints. They did what the Saints wanted to do. Right? They kind of found a little bit of steam, and they beat the teams they were supposed to beat, and then they get these 2 tough games against Green Bay and Jacksonville, 2 teams that beat the Saints. and they shellacked both of them. So they did what the Saints couldn't do, and they deserve a lot of credit for Dave Canales, the offensive coordinator, for getting all this really good play out of Baker Mayfield. They've turned around something that was a season-long struggle for them, and that's running the football. They've got a lot of aging players on their defense, just like the Saints, and they're getting a lot out of those guys. Devin White, I don't know if you'd call him aging, but he's been kind of on the downslope the last year or two, and he makes a huge interception against Jacksonville last week. They're getting the most out of their guys, and the Saints aren't. I still don't think that there's this like huge talent gap between these two teams. I don't think the Buccaneers are this like vastly superior team to the Saints, but they're squeezing much more out of the fruit than the Saints have this season.
And no doubt about that. I mean, I think you talk about the talent gap. Before the season, people would have said the talent gap was the other way around.
I was saying that in the middle of the season.
I don't know that that's the case. I don't know that we can clearly make that case right now. Anyway,
yeah. I don't think we can either. I think the Saints have had some backsliding from some of their better players. That's undeniable. And that's where we're going to start leading into some of the difficult conversations this offseason, because I mean, I don't know that I have to actually go back and look at it, but it's got to be at least half the roster has like void years, or they've had their contracts altered to the point where they're pushing money into future years. And now that's okay when those players are playing at a very high level, but when they're starting to slide, and when they're starting to not perform like the superstars they were 2-3 years ago, I mean, now you're in a really, really precarious position. So this is exactly what the Saints did not want to happen and could not afford to have happened.
Yeah. And there'll be, we will have salary cap discussions and all of that offseason
Well,
stuff.
it's annual.
Yeah. And I mean, this year it's going to be just a massive undertaking for this team to try to get better in the face of all of that. And we'll talk about that, whether they make a miracle run to the playoffs or not. But what you were saying, like, look, the Bucs have some players who look like they've gotten better. The Saints have some players who have backslid. That brings us to the betting line. The Bucs are favored in this game by 2.5. That's a huge turnaround from the team's first meeting in New Orleans, where I think the Saints were like a 5-6 point favorite in that game. And so, yeah, home field advantage is part of that, but clearly not all of that. So, Jeff, you were saying you're surprised the Bucs aren't favored by more, though. It's 2.5. Could be across the 3.
Traditionally, this has been a game where a lot of Saints fans make the trip. It's an easy flight down. Tampa doesn't have a lot of home support, relatively speaking. They did certainly during the Tom Brady era, but it's been I've covered a bunch of games down there where half the stadium's Saints fans and they take it over. I don't think that's going to happen this week. I do think there's going to be a decided home field advantage, because I think this late surge has kind of generated some enthusiasm in Tampa. So it'll be interesting to see how many Saints fans make the trip. We've seen some of the lack of support at home. I don't know if maybe people already booked those flights, so they're going to be down there anyway. But I just think you got two teams going in opposite directions. And I know the Saints had won 2 before that Rams game, but getting back to Matt's point of when they played good teams, and I think at this point we have to say Tampa's playing well. I mean,
they're above 500.
Yeah, like Luke said, I mean, they handled a Jacksonville team we saw come into the Dome and kind of have its way for the most part with the Saints for most of that game. I don't think Jacksonville's playing that well right now anyway. But point is, I think you got two teams going opposite directions right now. And I think it could play out like a lot of these late season NFL games play out, where's the motivation, who wants it. And I didn't see the Saints wanting it against the Rams, so I don't know if I'm going to see that against the Bucs.
I just want to say as an aside that Jeff has totally sealed our fate now. We have a 6 a.m. flight tomorrow. There will absolutely be a Houdat chant while he's trying to sleep in the plane.
Yeah, I will definitely try to sleep and keep my mouth closed. That's always a challenge.
Yeah, so no one snaps the photo of Jeff Duncan catching flies.
I already have...
Jaboni will.
Can we get like a collage of that up here somewhere?
He's got one stored on his iPhone. I guarantee.
Order the commemorative poster from our
2024 goals. Yeah. Just to reset the situation, we said this on Wednesday. We'll repeat it. Saints have to win both games this week at Tampa, next week at home against Atlanta to win to make the playoffs, and they need some help. They need the simplest path is that Carolina then also beats Tampa next week.
Yeah.
There is another. I say simple. I didn't say that it was likely. There is a way that they can get in through the wild card. If they were to win both, they would need either Seattle or the Rams to lose both, and they would need the winner of Sunday night's Minnesota-Green Bay game to then lose in Week 18. So anyway, point being, it's a long shot, but we'll dig into it. It has to start with a win on Sunday. If they win on Sunday, they will be alive going into Week 18. We know that much. So they win and they remain alive, at least in the division race going to Week 18. So quick note on injuries before we start the breakdown, Matt. Chris Olave looks pretty much 100% healthy. Cam Jordan's been on the injury report, but we think he'll play. On the other side, interesting, Carlton Davis starting corner for the Bucs and also Shaq Barrett starting linebacker. Both have not practiced the last 2 days. We're talking Friday before the Friday injury reports come out, but maybe small advantage for the Saints there.
Yeah, I mean, if Shaq Davis can't play, that's Shaq Barrett. Sorry, if Shaq Barrett can't play, then that's a big loss for Tampa. But I thought it was the most significant thing out of the locker room this week in terms of injuries was Ryan Ramczyk, dress reporters going on, kind of revealed what's going on with his knee, and it doesn't sound good. He said he probably needs surgery after the season, and it just really hasn't responded to this point. For so long, he's been able to kind of manage the pain. This has been a years-long issue at this point, but it's finally started to break down, and his body's breaking down. And the guy the word retirement didn't come up during that scrum. I wish I had asked it in retrospect, because he didn't. He said he needed to talk to the doctors and get a lot of answers, and admitted that he's thought about kind of what life looks like after football because of this knee at this point. So it's a serious issue. He didn't rule out playing if it felt better, but I just don't see any way at this point. I'd be shocked if even next week he gave it a go.
There was a point 2 years ago, I think it was the end of the 2021 season, when there was serious concern that he would ever play again, that this chronic condition he had in his knee was going to prevent him from going forward. So it was a surprise, frankly, that he played as well as he did last year, and I know he had some issues with it. He was always managing it, but it was that serious 2 years ago. So it doesn't surprise me that it's come to this point now, and it would not shock me if he retired. I mean, he's made a lot of money. He's had a great career. He's been on some great teams. I could see him hanging it up. Just just talking to Ryan, you can kind of tell he obviously is a very he's a great player. He's going to be one of the better players of the last decade. But football is not his whole life. He's got a lot of other things I think that interest him. Wants to get back up to Wisconsin and with his family. But I mean, it just would not shock me, especially the way things are going with the team right now. That's the kind of thing I think that also factors in.
Yeah, and you talk about. I mean, these guys are competitors first and foremost, right? I think when you get to a stage where your body is no longer allowing you to compete the way you feel like you should be able to, I think a lot of people would make that decision. This is all obviously he could. I mean, for all we know, he could come back and play.
He'd left open the window. He could play Sunday.
But this very well could be the end of the line for him, which would be a shame. I mean, when before this knee injury popped up, Ryan Ramczyk was one of the top 3 right tackles in all of professional football. He earned that $96 million contract that he got. He was awesome. So it really sucks to see this happen for somebody who's only been in the league. Hey, shoot, this is his 7th season.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
he's not even 30 yet.
Yeah,
he's 29.
Yeah, that's football, man, and it's big bummer for him, and especially for the Saints, because he's a cornerstone player for him.
And that's probably a good place to transition into our game breakdown. Want to let you know the Saints Insider Podcast is brought to you by Bank Plus. Subscribe to the Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel for us. Hit the like button. Tell your friends. We appreciate all of that. And so we'll go into when the Saints have the ball, and I think the offensive line maybe is as good a place as any to start. And we talk about Derek Carr up and down this season. Obviously, Alvin Kamara has had a down year. The common denominator, you can talk about Pete Carmichael's play calling. All of that stuff looks better when the offensive line is really good. And Jeff, it's just not. I mean, I don't think they've been the disaster we feared at times this year, but they just haven't been very good.
Right, and so I think we have to factor that in a lot with Derek Carr struggles because, as we all know, quarterback plays contingent on good protection. The running game has been abysmal. I mean, we keep thinking that they're going to have a game that is going to break out. It just never does. There's just nowhere to go for these backs. So, yeah, to me, that's been one of the bigger disappointments on the team. Obviously, you have to factor Trevor Penning into that. I mean, this was a guy, Luke just said the words. I mean, cornerstone player. That's what they thought they were getting with him, and it's been a complete wash. And that's set into motion some dominoes that, frankly, have hurt the talent level of the front line. So they're going to be challenged by Tampa Bay. I mean, Vita Vea is one of the best run stuffers in the league. They've got good guys on the edge, athletic young guys, including a Louisville product, Yaya Diaby, who leads all rookies in sacks, I might add. And he's going to be opposite Landon Young probably. So that'll be an interesting matchup. I think Tampa's actually, conversely to the Saints, some of their young talent's starting to emerge. Some of these guys in the last couple of drafts, we haven't seen as much of that from the Saints, particularly the rookie class, which is either because of injuries or whatever reason, just hasn't had a big impact this year in any way other than, I guess, the kicking game.
Yeah, it's weird. They had, 8 rookies make the team?
Yeah.
Right? 2 undrafted guys in their entire draft class. I think Brazil's been okay. He's had the flashes, and that's kind of it's kind of the type of season you expect out of an interior defensive lineman. It's one of the hardest positions in the NFL just to come in and play right away and make a huge impact. I think he's been solid. They've got next to nothing out of Foskey, who's he's been hurt the last couple of weeks, and Kendra Miller's obviously been dealing with injuries since he's been drafted.
Salaberry's hurt.
Salaberry's hurt.
Howden's good.
Howden's solid. Howden has surpassed the expectations for a 5th-round draft pick. A.T. Perry has made some really, really nice plays, but he's a role player, which again, 6th-round draft pick is kind of what you expect. And the rookie place kicker and punter have been really up and down. So it's just and obviously Jake Haener, he hasn't played a single snap this season. So it's just they're getting basically nothing out of this year's rookie class, even though they're occupying eighth of the roster.
And it's got to be frustrating for Saints fans when you see, again, not to focus on Diaby, but like that guy was taken, I think, mid-rounds, and the Saints drafted the guy in the 2nd round, and they've gotten nothing from him really compared to a guy that's got 6.5 sacks. So, and I think similarly, some of their other young players, they did a good job in Tampa of transitioning post Tom Brady. They kind of purged a lot of the roster this past offseason. They went young in a lot of areas. They worked on their offensive line. They finally moved on from the tackle. Was it Smith?
Donovan Smith.
Yeah. Yes.
Donovan Smith, and I think who's
one of the other Kappa, maybe?
Yeah, Kappa.
Alex Kappa. So they tried to fix some of the offensive line. That was a struggle early, but they've done a good job to where if you look at their cap situation next year, it's much more manageable than what the Saints are looking at, and yet they're still have a better record, and they're paying less at their quarterback, so they're much more flexible at quarterback. I mean, who's to say the Bucs this year can't make a bold move to get one of these first-round quarterbacks and rookie and sit him behind Mayfield for a year or so? They're in a very good situation, and they're going to win maybe their third, in prime position to win a 3rd straight division title. And I think that's why we see such frustration from Saints fans is there's not a lot of hope beyond this was the year, and they're not even going to win it this year probably.
Really, the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Right? It's why the Saints remained aggressive. It's why they went out and got Derek Carr this year. It's why they kept adding to this roster and pushing everything back and kicking the can down the road as they usually do, because they looked at this as an opportunity, and they saw this team that I think clearly has a lot of talent. It has enough talent to go out and win this division. Mm-hmm. And they just haven't gotten, like we were talking about earlier, they just have not gotten nearly as much out of that talent as a lot of other teams have. I think that falls on coaching. It's highly disappointing. I mean, if the Saints organization isn't highly disappointed in this and wondering where they went wrong, then I got to question what's going on over there.
Probably in the wrong business if you're not disappointed by this. So the Bucs did what a lot of people wanted the Saints to do last year and try to kind of start a reset. And the Saints instead kind of went the other direction, And I think rightfully saw a good opportunity to win the division and make one last run. And it just, I think the clock struck midnight for a lot of these players before they thought that it would. So the other note, when the Saints have the ball, the Bucs are very good against the run. They're top 10 in the NFL against the run. They're number 32 in the NFL in passing yards per game allowed. You can throw on this team. Having said that, Matt, the first time, you weren't here, but the first time these teams played, Saints had 127 yards passing. Derek Carr, we can talk about that. We should have even been in the game with the shoulder injury he suffered the week before in Green Bay, but he was. They were bad. I think Michael Thomas was the leading receiver with like 53 yards. Alvin Kamara caught 13 passes for 33 yards. I mean, it was all short stuff.
Chris Olave, I think, had 1 catch on 6 targets.
Yeah, they threw down. I do remember one time he threw downfield, and it was almost like Carr was trying to prove that he could do it, but it was into coverage. It didn't work out. It was a bad effort. And that's why they lost 26-9. And that's one area they just have to be better Sunday if they're going to have a chance.
I mean, you'd think they would be with Carr's shoulder looking better at this point. They were able to throw on the Rams. The Rams were, a bad passing defense as well. So you would think, they're not going to have Michael Thomas. He hasn't practiced this week and has been out. It looks like he's probably going to miss the rest of the season unless maybe he comes back next week. But, Luke, you wrote about it. Olave's really found some rhythm here, and that's been really good for them. And then even a guy like Juwan Johnson, he's been a little bit more involved. So I could see an opportunity for them to throw the ball, but it kind of goes back to the offensive line again of how did they hold up there, and hasn't really been great. It's been okay. The line's been solid to me, but it hasn't been. Right. It's been terrible in the run game, but passing wise, they've been okay.
To me, the opposing game plan is to shut down the Saints on first and second down, and then just come after Carr on third down and challenge not only him but the protection and the alignment of the protection and just all the things the Saints have continuously struggled with. And that's the MO. Yeah. And that's why I was saying during the Rams game, the Saints were having a lot of success throwing on first down. They were getting chunks of yards on first down. When they do that kind of formulaic, let's run the ball with Alvin into the line, and he gets his 1.5 yards, and all of a sudden it's 2nd and 8, it spirals downhill. And then if they get any kind of penalty, which they get a lot of, they lead the league in offensive holding, which we don't ever really factor into the offensive line issues, but that certainly counts. This group really gets derailed because people really turn back their ears and come after them, especially creative coordinators like we saw last week, and I'm sure they're going to see with Todd Bowles.
Well, you saw with the Rams too, like Aaron Donald drew so much attention. Mm-hmm. A lot of both of their sacks are really Aaron Donald was double teamed, and that guy kind of sprung free based on that. And so, that you gotta have creative looks. Todd Bowles does have a lot of creative blitzes in his resume, and I think Tampa's a good defense.
Here's what I want out of this week. I want there to be absolutely zero excuses for why they're ignoring Taysom Hill in this game plan. He is one of their best players, regardless of position on the team. He is easily one of their most dynamic offensive weapons, and you just keep getting in these situations where he finishes a game with 2 carries, 3 carries, something like that. And you ask after, why didn't Taysom Hill get used? It's we were playing catch up, or it didn't fit the situation. It's like, shut up.
He should be healthy too, right?
The health wasn't an issue last week. It's like, use your best players, please. There's no reason. There was no reason for them not to use Taysom Hill in that Rams game last week. There's absolutely no reason, and I don't care what their explanation is. They had a chance to take the lead at halftime. I don't care about the catch-up stuff. No. And if you have to make up 20 points, well, guess what? Guess how you're going to get there? You're going to get there by feeding your best players the ball. Maybe he doesn't need 20 carries. He's never going to be that guy. But get him 10. Yeah. Let him throw the ball a couple times. At least make him a factor in the game, something you have to consider, because that's when they're at their best. And it just it's so frustrating to me that they have this guy and that they've turned this guy into this weapon, and then they just at points throughout the season they're just situation was not perfect to use him. Please stop.
And I feel like that's a great point. Part of the trap the Saints have had all the way back through the Peyton era has been they want to be so multiple that they want to be able to just take advantage of any look they're giving, any type of strategy that the defense. So if the defense says we're going to take Taysom Hill away, then they'll attack other areas.
Yeah,
That's
cool
the
when
process.
you have. That's cool when you have Drew Brees and Michael Thomas at his peak
Right.
and Alvin Kamara at his peak. They have Chris Olave and Taysom Hill, and occasionally Rashid Shaheed. Like they don't have a Hall of Fame quarterback on their team right now. They don't have a great offensive line. Alvin Kamara has not produced the way you want him to produce, probably because of that offensive line. But like the guy who has produced consistently whenever he's gotten involved is Taysom Hill. So like use your best players. Like don't forget all that stuff that you used to do because it's not who you are anymore.
No, I'm just saying that that's
I know.
the trap.
I know what you're saying.
That Pete Carmichael falls into.
Let's get
It's
fired
like
up.
we're gonna.
I like
we're
it
gonna-
better when you guys disagree.
No, I'm not disagreeing with him at all.
know.
I'm agreeing with him.
Disappointed.
Saying like I think that's what happens is they say, okay, they're taking this away, we're going to attack the weakness, and you can follow. I mean, sometimes you just need to impose your will. Certainly with a guy like Taysom Hill, who's we've seen over and over. I mean, when he comes in, lots of times people know it. It doesn't matter. They still get 7 yards.
Yeah, and you can then start to use that as a decoy and do other things
playoff
and make big
bit.
plays. Yeah, And so you're absolutely right. And Luke's been like that's like a spot on the Saints Insider bingo card is Luke advocating for Taysom Hill usage.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. Like you have to. I mean,
it's
so
more obvious now than it ever has been.
Yeah.
And there's look, and to be fair, like, yes, I will never understand offensive football the way these NFL coaches do. They're much smarter than I am about this. But like sometimes like the obvious thing is right there, the easy button is right there. Like push it, and
don't
do the good
overthink.
things.
Yeah, don't overthink.
Hit the pleasure button, and just like enjoy the outcome after that.
Makes things easier for Derek Carr too.
Yeah,
Takes
you're
some of the
talking
pressure off him.
about third and longs. If you run Taysom Hill on first or second down and he gets you 4 or 5 yards, barring a penalty or a sack, you're automatically not going to be in third and long. You're going to be third and 5 at worst, right? And that's manageable. You can handle that.
Right. And we're not talking about like again, we're not talking about 30 carries. But it can't be 2.
Yeah.
Like that's mismanagement to the highest degree, in my opinion.
And he's probably got the highest numbers. I have to look. I think he does still of broken tackles, missed tackles. I mean, that's where Alvin has really dropped off, his ability to make tacklers miss. But Hill, not only does he make them miss somewhat, but he runs through them. So that's another guy, because of the struggles with the offensive line, there's not a lot of running lanes. I want the 6'2", 235-pound battering ram going at there instead of the other backs. Maybe they're trying to, keep him healthy. I don't know. But it's
For
definitely
what?
an issue.
But for
saving
this,
up for
I
the
guess.
playoffs, man.
Yeah, for this. Yeah, they're in the playoffs now. All right. So Saints offense, clearly lots of problems. Let's flip things around. Let's go to when the Bucs have the ball, and they've been much better lately. Like Baker Mayfield has legitimately been the best quarterback in this division.
140 passer rating the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean he has been in
what's
bigger
going
games.
on?
He's been better. This is the guy that the Browns thought they were getting when they drafted him number 1 overall.
Well, I think he did have some injury issues, and he talked about that this week, that he finally feels healthy. But, man, he's playing as good as I've ever seen him. Early in the year, it felt like he was just kind of a Houdini, making some of these just plays off schedule, and I thought that's going to run out. But now he's actually looks totally comfortable in the offense, and he and Mike Evans have this amazing connection right now. There's obviously a lot of trust in him. Evans is having a career year, and without Lattimore this week, it's going to be a big challenge, I think, for the Saints to hold Evans down. They're going to have a plan for him, but Godwin also is a threat.
Yeah, Mike Evans left the first meeting between these teams with an injury in the first half, and then it was Godwin who went off for, I think,
Right.
like 113 yards or something. So that does play into the Saints' strength, Matt. Secondary is obviously very deep, probably the deepest position group on the team, and so it's going to be a challenge for them.
Yeah, I mean, we saw though last week what happens when they go up against a really good passing attack, and they were able to exploit. Now, I don't think Tampa does as much with the motions like the Rams do. But for me, the offense, getting Chris Godwin involved, it seems like he's really starting to come on as well. Mike Evans has been super consistent there, but, to have that other type of receiver, now you've got to account for both of them. And, I know Alontae Taylor got benched last game. He's got to get another opportunity to go, but I don't think Ike Yadam played very well
He did
either.
They went after him a lot.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so
And they're running the ball good with White.
Yeah, that was going to be the point I bring up. They are, I think, still ranked like 30th in the NFL in rushing, but like the last 5 weeks or so, they've really turned it on, and it really says how bad they were earlier in the season. But Rachaad White's been great. I think he's got 2 100-yard games in his last 4, which is 2 more 100-yard games that the Saints have this year. They weren't great running the ball last week, but I think that they are now forcing teams to reckon with that, which has opened things up for Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Trey Palmer and their tight end Cade Otton. They've got a lot of guys who can hurt you, and if you start to have to focus on Rachaad White or focus on making sure Mayfield doesn't get out of the pocket or all the other stuff that they can do, then that's where they can really hurt you.
You know what else I found? This surprised me working on that column for this weekend about the decisions that the Saints and Bucs made with the quarterback position. The numbers overall, Baker Mayfield's numbers really aren't that much better than Derek Carr's. They're very similar. And what shocked me was in the red zone, they're exactly the same. When I say exactly, I mean assuming Pro Football Reference is correct, they're like exactly the same. 30 completions, 59 attempts, 14 touchdowns, 1 interception in the red zone.
Wow.
So the perception of the two quarterbacks, though, because of the wins and because I think of how things have played out with expectations,
right? Yeah,
are completely different. But the numbers are very similar. I mean, even overall in the league, passer rating and all that, they're like 2 apart. So it's not maybe he's performing better in the clutch, which I think probably goes without saying. But just on paper, their numbers are very, very similar.
I think you could probably make the argument that a lot of Derek's production this year has come in those
mop up,
comeback situations,
trying to erase a 20-point deficit or something like that.
Empty calories. Kind of thing.
And look, I think I think the fan reaction towards him sometimes can be a little unfair. Their expectations were so based on the way they're treating him now. Their expectations were just like way up here for what he was going to be, and it's not who he has been throughout his career. He's never been like a top 5 NFL quarterback, but I do think that he needs to play a lot better. That's they are paying him a huge sum of money, and yes, they're going to pay him a huge sum of money next year because that's not going away.
You're going to pay him whether he plays or not.
It's already guaranteed. He's got to play better, but I do think that the criticism around him has been pretty harsh, and I don't know if all that is warranted.
One more point on the Bucs offense, and you guys mentioned Rachaad White. They stuck with the run early in the year, even when it wasn't working, almost to the point of being stubborn. Like, I think I looked around the time of the team's first meeting, and the Bucs were worst in the NFL at distance to go on third down. I mean, they were constantly facing 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 because they were running so much on 1st and 2nd down, and it wasn't working. But we've seen that pay off, and that ties into what you're talking about with Taysom, too. It's like, hey, maybe it's not going to bust a big play every time, but if you can just sort of pound away and get a few yards, it can pay off. And so to that point, I think the Saints need to stop the run first and kind of force the Bucs into these situations where they can get after Mayfield.
If they can.
Yeah.
Well, stopping the run has been a huge problem this year. They did a lot better in those 2 wins against the Panthers and the Giants. They look great. And then as soon as they went up against a rushing attack that had a pulse in L.A., they went back to looking like they have all season.
Yeah. Well, can they get it done? That's the whole point. Right?
Yeah.
So.
I mean, yes. But like they need a lot better play out of their front than they have been getting.
All right, so we'll move in. Saints Insider Podcast. Speaking of can they get it done, quick keys to the game, and then our predictions. I think I got my key to the game, but Matt, I'm going to let you start. What do the Saints need to do to stay in this one and win this must-win game?
I mean, it starts with Baker. He's looked so good the last 4 games that you've got to be able to make him look like the old Baker Mayfield again. And, I was looking at the Browns game last night, and I was thinking about how Kevin Stefanski's kind of had a weird coaching career. And I looked at one of his last year with Baker. Like, Baker's stats weren't really good at all. He really just had kind of fallen off a cliff. I think lost a bit of his confidence, but what he's been able to do now has been really impressive. And I think, going back to the Carr thing real quick, I think it comes down to expectations. There weren't a lot of expectations for Baker Mayfield this year. When he plays above those, I think the opinion of him is higher. And for the Saints, it's just a matter of stopping him, getting pressure. And another thing you have to be aware of with him is he is like a Houdini in a way in terms of he can escape pressure. Even when you think you have him, you've got to be mindful of that. So, sound tackling, I wrote about that earlier in the week as well. Just you've got to be able to bring these guys down.
Yeah, and my key to the game ties into that perfectly because the Bucs are tied for second best in the NFL in giveaways, only 14 giveaways on the year. The Saints, so good at that for the first 10 games of the season. 3 of their last 4 games, they've had no takeaways. I think the Panthers, they got 2, but against the Lions, Giants, Rams, didn't turn the ball over at all. They got to get the ball back a couple times and make things easier on the offense and maybe get some free points. So that's mine.
I'm going to go with a little bit of a double barrel here because I'm kind of building off of Matt's point, and that's in that Week 4 matchup, the Buccaneers absolutely torched the Saints on third downs. Baker was incredible in that game. I can't remember the stat off the top of my head, but it was something crazy. They converted 6 of their first 8 or 8 of their first 9 or something.
And they were
like
long
that.
ones too. I remember.
And they were unexpected plays, and a lot of that was Baker just creating, getting out of sacks, extending plays. They need to net that in the bud this week. That can't come back and haunt them again. And then number 2, to me, I think they gotta be ready for number 31 on Tampa. Antoine Winfield Jr. is. He is exactly. I remember when he came out, and I was like, "There's no way the Saints are going to draft him, even though he's an awesome player, because he's 5'9" and 190 pounds, and he doesn't fit any of their prototypes. But he has gone there and done exactly what he did in college, which is just be a pest who's always taking the ball away. And I'm thinking back on a number of Saints losses, including this year, the ill-fated Adam Prentice dive from the 1-yard line, from their own 1-yard line. Who's the guy who's coming up with that play? It's Antoine Winfield coming in and punching the ball out. I think he even recovered the fumble. He did that in the playoff loss against Tampa when he punched the ball out of Jared Cook's hands. He is always around the ball, and he is always making plays against the Saints team, and they need to not let that happen this time.
That's a great point because I mentioned how few times Tampa's given the ball away. They gave it away once in that game against the Saints in the Dome, and it was a pick right on the goal line that gave the Saints kind of a get-out-of-jail-free card before the half, and Adam Prentice fumbled it right back because of Winfield. Bucs scored anyway. I think it was 14-3 at that point, and the game was essentially over. So can't let that happen. Jeff, what you got?
Yeah, Winfield's kind of their honey badger.
Yeah.
Very much.
Very similar player. I mean, just always around the ball.
Right. Oh, look, mine's all just intangibles in this game, not the tangible. I mean, I think they got to bring their energy level, match the intensity of Tampa Bay, and then just simple stuff here. But they got to score early and get ahead. Because I think if they get down early, I think this thing could unravel on them. The writing will be on the wall for the season. I could see them kind of packing it in. So I think they've got to start fast, get a little confidence, take that crowd out of the game, hit Tampa Bay in the mouth, let them know they're going to be here in this game early on, as opposed to what I saw in L.A., where I think they just got punched in the mouth and didn't respond at all.
Yeah.
So that's simple for me.
All right, prediction time. Saints at Bucs, noon on Sunday. Saints, finally, we can responsibly and accurately say this is a must-win game. Their season is over. I mean, they'll still play the Falcons, but the season is over if they don't win on Sunday. Rod Walker's not here. He's kind of thinking along the same lines as you, I think, Jeff, where things could unravel. He's got Bucs winning 27-14, so kind of finishing the Saints off fairly easily. Matthew Paris, your prediction.
I've got 27-17, I believe, for Tampa. I just don't see them being able to slow Baker Mayfield down. I think the Bucs are really clicking right now, and I think the Saints will be able to have some success more than the first meeting, but I just don't see it being enough. I don't think they're playing good enough football at this time of the season to be able to save their season.
All right. I really wanted to pick the Saints again. I just think the spot sets up well for them. They have the extra rest. They're desperate. Tampa Bay, as you mentioned, Luke, not a great team coming off 2 huge wins. Like just from a picking games, betting parlance, like this is a spot where you want to back the Saints. But I did that against the Lions. I did that against the Rams. I was the only one to do it. Fool me twice, it's my fault. I'm not doing it 3 times. I do think it'll be a close game. I think Tampa Bay wins at 20-19 is what I've got coming down to the end. And the other thing is, can you trust the Saints to come up with a big play in a close game? And they haven't done it all year. So I think if it is a close game, which I think it will be, I think Tampa comes up with one more play and wins it 20-19. Luke?
I have one thing to say to you, man. Scared money don't make money.
I'm shamed, man, because you're dead on with that.
All right.
I'll hang my head.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm picking the Saints. Oh, ye of little faith. I think they are
Unbelievable.
Any more of those Kool-Aids?
Jeff's
laying
giving
around?
away his pick already.
Man, check the
All right,
temperature
explain
here.
yourself.
All right. Look, I just think this team has been. I have no good reason to pick them other than the fact that they've just despite the fact that I have a very good record at 12-3, they do not do the thing that you expect them to do, ever. Even though every game feels the same, it all happens in these ways that are just like, how did that happen? So I just feel like they're going to find a way to win this game. I think the Bucs, as I've said many times, and I keep kicking myself for saying this, I don't think they're very good. I think the whole NFC South kind of sucks. So I don't think it's like this really unreasonable thing for the Saints to go in there and get a win, snap this 3-game losing skid they have against Tampa. Tampa's got a lot on the line. I think Saints do too. So I feel not confident at all in it, but I'm picking the Saints.
20-17 is Luke's final. Jeff, what do you got?
Well, I think Luke's got a point in that for a while that the Bucs and the Saints owned that series. Back in the Tom Brady days, just a couple of years ago, the Saints went down there. I was convinced the Bucs were going to kill the Saints in that rematch game, and the Saints went down, I think, and won 9-0.
9-0
With Dennis Allen as the acting
Dennis
head
Allen's
coach.
head coach. And then they routed. I mean, they owned them, and it's flipped. I think they've won now. Was it 3 in a row?
I think it's 3, yeah.
3 in a row, could be 4.
They swept them last year.
Including the game in Tampa last year that really took the season off track.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
That's right. That's true.
game.
So, yeah, I feel like, for whatever reason, I don't think Todd Bowles is some kind of football genius in any way. I don't even know how good their staff is. Although I do think he made a great hire in Dave Canales. That was smart. I mean, he turned over. Imagine that. You make a coaching change, and it's worked out for them. So I think there's just all the boxes check on Tampa: incentive, motivation. They're going to have T-shirts in the locker room to win the division, and I think they're going to steamroll the Saints. It wouldn't shock me if this was the most lopsided game of the year for the Saints.
Right. Make sure we play this back next week.
All right.
What
Bring it
was
on.
your score?
13-3.
31-16, which would be the
Bunch of
second most
Blake
lopsided game of the year behind the first Tampa Bay game.
Bunch of Blake
which was
Rupe
17.
field goals, baby.
Yeah,
Get
17
used
points.
to it.
All right, so that's our story, and we're sticking to it. Luke's got the Saints. The other 4 of us have the Bucs. I do think it'll be a good game. The other point I'll bring up just in closing is if the Saints should win or the Falcons, who are the other team alive in the NFC South, go to Chicago and win, I think we're looking at Saints-Falcons. We've been talking about it as a Sunday night flex. I think it's a Saturday game. It sets up perfectly. If either of those teams is still alive, they have to win to stay alive. And you don't put them in the same window as the Carolina Tampa Bay game, and then it's like good TV on Saturday, and then sets up good TV on Sunday. I think it's the perfect Saturday flex.
Good TV by whose definition?
I was
Yeah.
going to say, I
What is
watched
that
that
good
first
TV?
game between those teams. I don't
There's
think
nothing good about that.
Okay, that's a good point. Good, maybe good is the wrong word, but intriguing. People turn it on. It'll have
it's football.
consequences.
You'll enjoy it.
It'll have consequences. So
And look,
that's,
hey, that would be they moved to Saturday. That's King's Day. That's the official start of Mardi Gras.
there you go.
Be down here for
King cakes in the dome.
for Joan of Arc and make your way over to the dome.
So if both Saints and Falcons lose and they're eliminated, it probably won't happen. But I think if one of them wins, particularly if it's the Saints, I think we see Saturday football at the Dome
Not going to have to worry about that.
next week. Okay. All right, you heard it here first. Saints Insider brought to you by Bank Plus. We appreciate all of you. Subscribe to the channel for us. Hit the thumbs up below. We appreciate you here on the Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel. And we'll talk to you Sunday, New Year's Eve, post-game show, whether it goes good or bad, from Raymond James Stadium in Tampa Bay. So tune in for that about 30 minutes after the game ends. Until then, for Matthew Paris, Luke Johnson, Jeff Duncan, Norman Bell is behind the glass for us. I'm Zach Ewing. Thanks for watching.